Look, I'm not saying Marcus Webb was the worst choice for humanity's first official contact with the Galactic Council. I'm just saying that literally everyone else in the diplomatic corps suddenly came down with a mysterious illness the day assignments were handed out. Food poisoning, they claimed. All 47 of them at the same time, very convenient. So there Marcus was, sitting in what he thought was just a really uncomfortable chair at the neutrality station, orbiting some planet he couldn't pronounce, suffering from the worst case of faster-than-light lag known to man, running on space station coffee that tasted like diesel fuel mixed with regret, facing down General Kravik of the Vrax Empire. Now, General Kravik was not what you'd call approachable. Picture a 7-foot-tall reptilian nightmare covered in ceremonial bone armor that Marcus really hoped was not from anybody important. Kravik had teeth like serrated knives, eyes that glowed a disturbing shade of yellow, and a voice that sounded like rocks being ground into smaller, angrier rocks. His honor guard stood behind him, each one looking like they could bite through steel, and probably had. The other delegates in the room, a nervous insectoid ambassador named Chitrik who kept rubbing his antennae together, and a gelatinous trade representative called Blorgo, who was literally quivering, were seated as far from Kravik as physically possible. Marcus had started the meeting by accidentally sitting in what the station coordinator frantically informed him was the chair of submission, traditionally used by species accepting defeat. Great start. Really setting the tone for human competence. Kravik had watched this with what Marcus hoped was amusement and not hunger, then launched into what was clearly a rehearsed intimidation speech. The general's translator implant rendered his growling words into flat mechanical English, which somehow made it worse. Human Marcus Webb. You come before the Vrax Empire as a lesser species, soft and weak, knowing nothing of the galaxy's true nature. For 3,000 years my people have conquered the stars. We are warriors without equal. Our strength is legendary. Our enemies tremble at our approach. Marcus nodded along, trying to stay awake. He'd heard similar speeches from corporate executives, usually right before asking for unpaid overtime. And when we defeat our enemies, Kravik continued, his voice dropping to a predatory rumble, we honor them in the traditional way. We consume their flesh. We take their strength into ourselves. We feast upon those who dare oppose us, that they may live on within the Vrax forever. Chitrik made a squeaking noise and appeared to be praying. Blorgo had gone completely translucent with fear. Marcus, however, perked up for the first time since the meeting started. Wait, hold on. You guys actually eat people? The translator seemed uncertain how to render the tone. Kravik leaned forward, sensing weakness to exploit. Yes, human. We devour our enemies. It is our most sacred tradition, our greatest honor. When we conquer your pathetic species, we will feast upon your bones and... No, sorry, I get the intimidation thing. Very scary. Great delivery. But I'm genuinely curious now. You actually eat other sentients? Like, is it good? What's the preparation method? The room went silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to pause. Kravik's translator made a sound like a computer trying to divide by zero, then rebooted. The preparation method? Yeah, like, how do you cook them? Roasting, braising, what are we talking about here? Chitrik fainted, his exoskeleton clattering against the floor. Nobody moved to help him. General Kravik had conquered 47 star systems. He'd stared down warrior races that made Earth's ancient Spartans look like pacifist philosophers. He'd personally led the charge against the Quantum Hive, a species that could literally exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and he'd won. Not once in 3 centuries of military service had he encountered a situation his training hadn't prepared him for. Until now. He decided to double down. Clearly, the human didn't understand the gravity of the situation. Kravik would make it abundantly clear. We do not cook our enemies, human. We consume them as they fall. Raw, still warm from battle. We tear the flesh from their bones with our teeth. We make them watch as we devour their companions. We crunch through their... Marcus held up a hand, his face twisted in genuine horror. Okay, stop. Stop right there. You eat them raw? Like, completely raw? Not even a little sear? That is correct. It is the way of the warrior, the way of strength. Dude, that's just unsanitary. Have you people never heard of food poisoning, parasites, basic food safety? And the texture must be absolutely terrible. Raw meat is chewy and weird unless you're doing like a tartare situation. And even then you need proper preparation and… Blorgo made a sound like water going down a drain and began oozing toward the exit. One of Kravik's honor guard moved to block the door but seemed uncertain whether this situation called for violence or not. Marcus was on a roll now, the caffeine from the terrible coffee finally kicking in at the worst possible moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, I respect the whole warrior culture thing. Very impressive. Love the commitment. But if you're going to eat someone, at least respect the protein. There's a whole science to it. You've got to consider the muscle fiber density, the fat content, the connective tissue breakdown, low and slow for tougher cuts, high heat for tender bits. You need a good sear for the Maillard reaction. That's where the flavor development happens. And seasoning, oh man, don't even get me started on seasoning. Kravik found himself leaning forward, and not in a threatening way. More in a confused, slightly curious way. What is this Maillard reaction? Maillard. It's when amino acids and reducing sugars interact under heat to create complex flavor compounds. It's like basic culinary chemistry. You're telling me your empire has faster than light travel, but you've never figured out cooking? One of the honor guard, a slightly smaller Vrax warrior with scarred scales, quietly leaned toward his companion and whispered something that the translator picked up. Are humans too insane to bother conquering? Marcus pulled out his personal tablet, completely oblivious to the fact that he was potentially starting an interstellar incident. He started swiping through images. Look, here's what I'm talking about. This is a brisket that's been smoked for 14 hours at 225 degrees. See that bark? That's your spice rub caramelizing with the fat render. And this is a reverse seared steak. You get this perfect edge-to-edge medium rare with a crust that's… Are you guys even looking? Kravik was looking. He'd started this meeting planning to deliver an ultimatum of conquest. Now he was staring at images of cooked meat with an expression his face was not designed to make. His translator kept offering words like curious, confused, and somehow hungry. Your species does this to flesh before consuming it? Well, yeah. I mean, unless it's sushi grade and you're doing it right, but that's a whole different conversation. The point is, cooking isn't just about safety, it's about flavor development, texture modification, making the eating experience actually enjoyable instead of just cramming raw meat down your throat like some kind of… Marcus stopped, realizing every Vrax in the room was staring at him with those glowing yellow eyes. Chitrik had woken up, taken one look at the situation, and fainted again. Sorry, that came out judgmental. Your culture, your choice. I'm just saying there's a better way. A better way, Kravik repeated slowly. His claws were tapping on the table, a rhythmic sound that Marcus's instincts were screaming meant danger. You believe your soft species knows more of consuming flesh than the Vrax Empire? About cooking it? Absolutely. 100%. We've been perfecting it for like 50,000 years. You guys have been doing raw for 3,000? That's not tradition, that's just stubbornness. The scarred honor guard made a choking sound that might have been laughter. Kravik silenced him with a look that could melt hull plating. General Kravik stood, his full height making Marcus acutely aware that he was, in technical terms, in deep trouble. The bone armor rattled with the movement, and every predatory instinct the Vrax possessed was suddenly focused on the human diplomat who'd somehow turned a conquest announcement into a cooking debate. Human Marcus Webb, you have insulted the traditions of the Vrax Empire. You have mocked our sacred practices. You have questioned our superiority. Marcus sighed. He was definitely getting fired. Possibly also eaten, which would really make the performance review awkward. In one cycle, Kravik continued, his voice dropping to a threatening growl, the Varax fleet will arrive at one of your colony worlds. We will conquer it. We will consume your people. If you surrender and accept consumption, it will be quick. If you resist, it will be slow and painful. Either way, we will feast. This is the way of the Vrax. This is inevitable. The other delegates were frantically typing on their communication devices, probably updating their governments about humanity's imminent extinction. Blorgo had successfully oozed out of the room. Smart blob. Marcus rubbed his temples. The FTL lag was catching up with him, and he was pretty sure he'd just gotten humanity into a war because he couldn't keep his mouth shut about food preparation. His mom had warned him about this, not specifically about alien barbecue criticism starting wars, but about his inability to leave things alone. But then again, he was already in trouble. Might as well commit. Okay. Counterproposal. Kravik's translator took a moment to process that. What? You want to eat us? Fine. I get it. Warrior culture, tradition, very metal. But here's the deal. You give us that one cycle, we'll prepare a proper feast on that colony world. You show up, we'll have everything ready. A real meal, cooked right, seasoned properly, the whole 9 yards. You wish to cook yourselves for us? One of the honor guard sounded genuinely confused. Not ourselves, Jesus. I mean, we'll source appropriate proteins that match your dietary requirements. But we'll prepare them correctly. If you try it and don't think it's better than your raw flesh situation, you can eat us however you want. Traditional style. But if we're right, if our cooking is better, you leave humanity alone and we'll send you some recipe books. Maybe a few cooking shows. We've got thousands of those. The room was silent except for Cheetrick's unconscious wheezing. Marcus's assistant, Jenny Rodriguez, who'd been sitting in the corner quietly updating her will, stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You're betting humanity's survival on barbecue? She hissed. I'm betting humanity's survival on the fact that cooked food is objectively better than raw food, yes. Kravik was making a sound deep in his chest that the translator couldn't interpret. His honor guard were exchanging glances, their body language uncertain. The scarred one was definitely trying not to look interested. You would teach the Vrax Empire your cooking methods? I'd teach anyone who asks. It's not classified information. It's just food preparation. Well, good food preparation takes practice, but the basics are simple. Heat plus time plus seasoning equals better eating experience. This isn't rocket science. Actually, it's less complicated than rocket science. You guys have rockets. You can handle grilling. Kravik's claws drummed on the table again. His tactical mind, honed by centuries of warfare, was analyzing this bizarre situation. The human showed no fear, which was either incredible courage or incredible stupidity, possibly both. The challenge was unusual, but the Vrax respected boldness. They also respected anyone willing to back up their claims. And if Kravik was being honest with himself, which he rarely was about anything other than military strategy, he'd been having indigestion for about 300 years. Raw meat sat heavy. He'd just assumed it was part of being a warrior. This colony world, what is it called? New Memphis. It's a terraformed agricultural planet, nice place. They actually have an annual barbecue competition that... Enough. Kravik made a decision that would change galactic history. The Vrax accept your challenge, Marcus Webb. In one cycle, our fleet will arrive at New Memphis. You will present your cooked feast. If it is not superior to our traditions, we will consume your people and conquer your worlds. If it is superior... He paused, considering what he was agreeing to. If it is superior, we will leave humanity untouched and accept your cooking knowledge. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Great. Cool. I'm gonna need your contact information so I can send you some prep questions. You know, dietary restrictions, spice tolerance, preferred doneness levels, that kind of thing. My contact information? Yeah, like an email or whatever you guys use. Actually, do you have allergies? I should ask about allergies. The translator had to invent 3 new words to describe the concept of email to a Vrax warrior. Kravik's honor guard watched as their general, conqueror of star systems, destroyer of fleets, slowly and with great dignity, provided his communication codes to a human who was now asking about acid reflux and whether Vrax could handle capsaicin. Jenny was still staring at Marcus. If we survive this, I'm requesting a transfer. Get in line, Marcus muttered, already typing out a message about meat thermometers. New Memphis was having a collective panic attack. Marcus stood in the main colony square facing about 3,000 colonists who were all trying to process the fact that their continued existence depended on winning a cooking competition against a species that wanted to eat them. So let me get this straight. said Governor Patricia Walsh, a woman who'd moved to New Memphis specifically to escape the chaos of Earth politics. We have 5 days to prepare a meal so good that it convinces literal predators not to devour us. 6 days technically. One cycle is about 28 hours longer than an Earth week. Oh, well, that makes it so much better. But Marcus had a secret weapon, one he'd been holding in reserve. He looked out over the crowd and saw exactly what he needed: weathered faces, calloused hands, and the unmistakable confidence of people who took meat preparation very seriously. "I'm from Houston originally," Marcus announced, "Texas born and raised, and I am personally offended that some lizard people who eat their food raw think they know anything about cooking meat." A ripple went through the crowd. New Memphis had been colonized primarily by folks from Earth's southern and southwestern regions, people who'd brought their culinary traditions across the stars. The annual barbecue competition wasn't just entertainment, it was religion. A massive man in the front row, arms crossed, nodded slowly. "That is a profound disrespect to the craft." "Thank you, Big Eddie." That's what I said. Big Eddie Thompson ran the most successful smokehouse on New Memphis. He'd won the last 4 barbecue championships with brisket that people wrote poetry about. He stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "All right, Webb. You want to teach some aliens about proper cooking? I'm in. But we're doing this right." Within an hour, Marcus had assembled a team that would have made any cooking show jealous. Big Eddie handling the smoking operations, Maria Santos from the Taco Truck Collective managing the sides and sauces, Jackson Liu, who'd won 3 interplanetary grilling championships overseeing the high heat stations, and Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a food scientist who'd been dying to test her theories about alien digestive systems on actual aliens instead of just computer models. "Their biology is fascinating," Yuki said, scrolling through the information Kravik had sent. "Highly efficient protein processing, minimal carbohydrate needs, but they do have taste receptors. Lots of them, actually. They can taste umami, salt, and they've got heat sensors similar to ours. They're just eating everything raw like barbarians. Can they handle smoke? Should be fine. Their respiratory system is actually more robust than ours. They evolved on a volcanic planet, so they're used to airborne particulates." "Outstanding. What about spice tolerance?" Yuki grinned. "That's the interesting part. They've got capsaicin receptors, but they've never triggered them because their food doesn't have capsaicin. We could introduce them to a whole new experience." Over the next 6 days, New Memphis transformed into the galaxy's most intense culinary operation. They built massive grills, smokers the size of small buildings, and rotisseries that could handle whole locally raised cattle analogs. The smell of smoking meat began permeating the entire colony. Marcus sent increasingly detailed questions to General Kravik, who responded with the kind of thorough military precision usually reserved for tactical reports. Preferred temperature ranges, texture tolerances, portion sizes for a Vrax warrior. Kravik's messages were formal and dignified, but Marcus could detect a growing curiosity underneath the military jargon. On the 4th day, Kravik sent a message asking what Marcus had meant by different sauce options. By the 5th day, he was inquiring about the chemical composition of smoke flavor. His honor guard was apparently also asking questions, which Kravik framed as intelligence gathering, but Marcus suspected was just curiosity. The colony's children got involved too, setting up picnic areas and decorating the main square with banners that said things like, "Welcome to Flavor Country," and "We're too delicious to eat." The adults weren't sure if that was helping, but nobody had the heart to take them down. On the morning of the 6th day, sensors detected the Vrax fleet entering the system. 40 warships, each one capable of turning a city into a crater. They moved into orbit with the kind of precision that spoke of countless battles, countless victories. New Memphis went quiet. Even Big Eddie, who'd been confidently smoking brisket for 18 hours straight, looked nervous. Marcus checked his meat thermometer one more time. The brisket was at 203 degrees, perfect. The ribs had been on for 6 hours and were developing a bark that looked like mahogany. The grilled vegetables, which Maria insisted they include for balance, were ready. Jackson's high heat station was producing perfectly seared steaks with gorgeous crust formation. Governor Walsh approached Marcus, trying to hide her shaking hands. "Webb, this is insane. We're betting everything on barbecue." Marcus looked up at the warships blotting out the sun. "Governor, humanity has been perfecting the art of cooking meat since we figured out fire. We've got 50,000 years of culinary evolution behind us. Those guys have been eating raw flesh and wondering why they have indigestion. We've got this." "You sound a lot more confident than you look." "I'm terrified. But I'm also right. And sometimes that's enough." The first shuttle began its descent, atmospheric friction turning it into a falling star. Marcus took a deep breath, smelling smoke and seasoning, and 6 days of desperate preparation. "All right, people. Time to show these aliens what humanity does best. We're not the strongest species, we're not the fastest, but when it comes to turning raw ingredients into something amazing, we're the undisputed champions of the galaxy." Big Eddie pumped his fist. "That's right. Now let's serve some food before I have a heart attack." The shuttle landed in the main square with a hydraulic hiss. The ramp descended, and General Kravik of the Vrax Empire, conqueror of 47 star systems, stepped out onto a planet that smelled better than anywhere he'd ever been in 300 years of life. His honor guard followed, weapons ready, scanning for threats. But they kept getting distracted by the smell. Their nostrils flared. Their tongues flickered. One of them asked, in a voice the translator marked as confused, what that incredible aroma was. Marcus stepped forward, wearing an apron that said "Grill Sergeant" in big letters, holding a probe thermometer like a weapon. "General Kravik, welcome to New Memphis. I hope you're hungry." General Kravik had walked into ambushes. He'd faced overwhelming odds. He'd charged into battles where victory seemed impossible. He'd stared down opponents who outweighed him by several tons. None of that had prepared him for the sight before him. The main square had been transformed into what Marcus called a proper cookout. Long tables groaned under the weight of prepared meats, sides, sauces, and what appeared to be decorative plants. Massive grills still radiated heat, smoke rising into the sky. Humans bustled around with an organized chaos that reminded Kravik of a military operation, except everyone was holding tongs instead of weapons. "Right this way, General," Marcus said, gesturing toward the main table. "We've prepared a tasting menu based on your dietary requirements and the information you provided. I figured we'd start with the basics and work our way up to the experimental stuff." Kravik's honor guard fanned out, still scanning for threats. The scarred one, whose name was Vex, kept staring at a smoker the size of a small vehicle. Smoke leaked from its edges, carrying a scent that was triggering responses in his brain that had nothing to do with warfare. "This is your challenge?" Kravik asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Prepared flesh? Cooked meat, seasoned and treated with respect." "Yeah. First up, we've got brisket. This cut comes from the chest area, lots of connective tissue, tough if you just eat it raw, but Big Eddie here has been smoking it for 18 hours at 225 degrees. Low and slow, letting all that collagen break down into gelatin. The result is tender, flavorful, with a crust we call bark that's got more complexity than anything you've experienced." Big Eddie stepped forward, a man who'd faced down enough barbecue judges to be unfazed by alien warriors. He sliced the brisket against the grain, each piece edged with that dark, caramelized crust, the interior showing a perfect smoke ring. "This is my life's work," Eddie said simply. "Try it." Kravik approached the table like it might explode. His training said this was a trap. His instincts said something unprecedented was happening. His nose said whatever that smell was. It was speaking to parts of his brain he didn't know existed. He picked up a slice of brisket, the translator noting that it was warm but not hot, tender but not falling apart. His honor guard watched intently, hands near weapons, as their general brought the piece to his mouth and bit down. The silence stretched. Kravik chewed slowly, his expression unreadable. Marcus was sweating, and not just from the grill heat. Big Eddie had his arms crossed, but his fingers were tapping nervously. Kravik swallowed, reached for another piece, then another. Within 30 seconds, he'd eaten 6 slices of brisket with a focus that was somehow more intense than his earlier threats of conquest. "The texture is," Kravik's translator struggled, "soft but substantial. The exterior has a resistance that yields to pressure. The flavor is complex, multiple sensations occurring simultaneously. There is smoke, salt, something sweet, something that makes my mouth produce excess saliva, and an overall sensation of satisfaction, Marcus offered. That is an acceptable word. Vex stepped forward cautiously. General, if I may? Kravik gestured permission, his attention still on the brisket. Vex took a piece, ate it, and made a sound that the translator couldn't classify. It definitely wasn't a battle cry. It sounded almost like a whimper. This is what food can be? Vex asked quietly. That's just the first course, Marcus said, gaining confidence. Maria, bring out the ribs. Maria Santos approached with a platter of pork ribs that had been in the smoker for 6 hours, glazed with 3 different sauce options. We weren't sure about your spice tolerance, so we've got mild, medium, and what we call Texas hot. I recommend starting mild. The next hour was perhaps the strangest in galactic history. Vrax warriors, conquerors of star systems, discoverers of interstellar travel, veterans of countless battles, sat at picnic tables trying different preparations of cooked meat and experiencing what Marcus called a flavor journey. They tried the ribs, pulling the tender meat from the bones with their claws, and then, after watching the humans, using their hands. The medium sauce was a revelation. The hot sauce made Vex's eyes water, but he kept eating it with a determination usually reserved for combat. Jackson Lu presented perfectly grilled steaks, seared at high heat for exactly 90 seconds per side, rested and sliced. The Vrax had never experienced the contrast of a crispy exterior and a tender, juicy interior. One of the honor guard, a warrior named Crix, actually sat down heavily after trying it, apparently overwhelmed. They discovered coleslaw, which Marcus had to explain 3 times before they understood it was plant matter meant to complement the meat. Vex became obsessed with it, eating multiple servings while asking detailed questions about the creamy dressing. Kravik worked his way through the spread with methodical precision, trying everything, sometimes multiple times. He asked questions about preparation times, temperature control, seasoning ratios. The military commander in him appreciated the precision and planning required. The 300-year-old carnivore in him was having what he could only describe as a religious experience. Human Marcus, Kravik said finally, after trying his 4th different sauce. Explain to me how the Vrax Empire has consumed flesh for 3,000 years and never discovered this. Well, no offense, but you guys seem to have tied your eating to your warrior culture. Raw flesh equals strength, that whole thing. So nobody questioned it. You made it a tradition instead of a method. That is... Kravik paused. That is an accurate assessment, and deeply embarrassing. Hey, everyone's got cultural blind spots. Some Earth cultures thought tomatoes were poisonous for like 200 years. We're not perfect. Dr. Yuki approached with what she called the experimental dishes, preparations based on Vrax biology that incorporated umami-heavy ingredients, carefully balanced spices, and textures designed for their specific palate. Kravik tried each one with scientific interest and increasing approval. By the time they reached dessert, which Marcus had to explain was a sweet course that wouldn't make sense for Vrax biology, but they'd prepared a savory alternative. The invasion fleet's soldiers had started coming down in shuttles to see what was happening. The colony square was full of Vrax warriors sitting at picnic tables, trying Earth-style barbecue, and having what appeared to be collective existential crises. Kravik stood, his ceremonial bone armor now spotted with various sauces, his claws slightly greasy. Every human in the square tensed. This was the moment of judgment. The general surveyed the scene, his warriors eating with enthusiasm that was somehow more disturbing than their earlier military precision. The smell of smoke and cooked meat hanging in the air, the humans watching nervously. Human Marcus Webb, Kravik said formally. On behalf of the Vrax Empire, I must inform you of our decision. Marcus held his breath. Big Eddie gripped his tongs like a weapon. Governor Walsh looked ready to pass out. We have been eating incorrectly for 3,000 years. This is unacceptable. This is humiliating. This is... Kravik paused, searching for words. This is the greatest discovery in Vrax's history. The challenge is yours. We concede completely. The colony erupted in cheers. Maria started crying. Big Eddie pumped his fist so hard he nearly dislocated his shoulder. Jenny looked at Marcus with an expression that was equal parts relief and disbelief. Vex approached Marcus holding an empty plate that had previously contained coleslaw. "Can we have more of the creamy plant matter?" "Yeah, man, help yourself. We made extra." 3 months later, Marcus Webb found himself back at the neutrality station, once again representing humanity at a diplomatic function. This time, however, his presence was requested specifically. The Crystalline Collective, a species made of living silicon with a superiority complex the size of a small moon, had demanded an audience. Ambassador Quartz, their representative, had the kind of voice that sounded like breaking glass arranged into words. "The human species is a blight on the galactic order. Your expansion is reckless. Your culture is chaotic. Your very existence is an affront to civilized space. The Crystalline Collective hereby demands your immediate withdrawal from all contested systems, or we will be forced to take corrective action." It was the kind of speech Marcus had learned meant war in diplomatic terms. The other delegates looked worried. Chitrik was already hyperventilating, though at least he stayed conscious this time. Marcus sighed. He was about to explain that humanity really did not have time for another conflict when his communicator buzzed. He glanced at it, saw the sender, and smiled. "Ambassador Quartz, before we continue, I think there's someone who wants to weigh in on this. The Crystalline Collective does not recognize." The station's proximity alarms went off. A Vrax warship, massive and bristling with weapons, dropped out of FTL directly next to the station. Not near it, next to it. Close enough that every delegate could see the weapons charging. A communication came through on the main channel, overriding all other systems. "This is General Kravik of the Vrax Empire. We were not invited to this function, but we felt our presence was necessary." Ambassador Quartz's crystalline structure flickered with what might have been concern. "General Kravik, the Vrax Empire has no jurisdiction in this matter. Our dispute is with the humans." "That is where you are incorrect. The humans are under Vrax protection. Any species that threatens humanity will face the full might of the Vrax fleet. This is not negotiable. This is not a discussion. This is a statement of fact. Do you understand, Ambassador Quartz?" The room was silent. Everyone understood. The Vrax Empire didn't make idle threats. Quartz's structure was flickering rapidly now. On what grounds does the Vrax Empire extend such protection? On the grounds that they are sacred chefs, keepers of culinary knowledge, and the only species in the galaxy that understands proper food preparation. Also, Marcus Webb is my friend, and I do not allow my friends to be threatened. Marcus had to suppress a smile. Sacred chefs. He'd gone from mid-level diplomat to religiously protected status in 3 months. Furthermore, Kravik continued, "We are scheduled to visit New Memphis next cycle. Marcus has promised to prepare the pulled pork dish again. If you interfere with this plan, I will take it personally, extremely personally." Ambassador Quartz made a sound like shattering glass, then reconstituted. "The Crystalline Collective withdraws its objections. We will resolve our territorial disputes through proper channels." "Excellent decision. Marcus, I will see you next cycle. Please prepare extra coleslaw. Vex has become dependent on it." The communication cut off. The warship powered down its weapons, but remained exactly where it was, a not-so-subtle reminder of Vrax's capabilities. Ambassador Quartz and their delegation left quickly, citing scheduling conflicts. Jenny approached Marcus, shaking her head. "So this is your life now? Solving interstellar conflicts with barbecue?" "Seems that way. Could be worse. At least the paperwork is getting more interesting." "How is more paperwork interesting?" "Well, I've got to file requisitions for supplies now. Do you know how hard it is to explain what liquid smoke is to a procurement officer? I had to include 3 diagrams. Chitrik, who'd managed to stay conscious through the whole exchange, approached nervously. "Marcus Webb, I must ask. This human ability to befriend predatory species through food preparation, is this a common human skill?" "I mean, sort of?" We've been doing it for like 50,000 years. First it was wolves, now it's space lizards. Same principle, really. Good food makes everyone happy. Fascinating. Terrifying, but fascinating. Do you think you could teach the Vracs to like others besides humans? Probably. Why? Because now the galaxy's most aggressive military empire is humanity's protective older brother, and frankly, it's making everyone nervous. If they could form similar bonds with other species, perhaps through these cooking lessons you've been providing, it might stabilize the political situation. Marcus considered this. He'd been sending Kravik and his honor guard cooking tutorials, recipe books, and the occasional care package of spices they couldn't get in Vrac space. The general had been sending back videos of his attempts, which ranged from surprisingly competent to accidentally melting his ship's galley. That's actually not a bad idea. Start a kind of cultural exchange program, cooking classes in exchange for peace treaties. Would the Vracs agree? Well, Vex asked me last week if we had classes he could take. I think they're legitimately interested. Plus, Kravik mentioned that several other Vracs commanders have been asking about the cooking thing. Apparently, word spread through their fleet that there was a better way to eat. Jenny was typing furiously on her tablet. I'm already drafting the proposal. This is either going to be the most successful diplomatic initiative in human history or the weirdest footnote in the archives. Why not both? Governor Walsh called from New Memphis later that evening. Webb, I need you to approve an expansion to the colony. Kravik wants to build a permanent Vracs embassy here. He's calling it a culinary education center, but it's basically a military base full of aliens who want to learn grilling. Is that a problem? Problem? It's the best thing that ever happened to our economy. We've got 3 warships worth of soldiers who want to buy local ingredients, cooking equipment, and spices. Big Eddie is opening 2 new locations. Maria's Taco Truck Collective is expanding into a full restaurant chain. We're becoming the galaxy's culinary capital by accident. That's great, Governor. Also, Kravik is visiting next week and he's bringing his entire command staff. They want a comprehensive course in smoking techniques. Can you be here? Marcus looked at his calendar, saw 6 diplomatic meetings scheduled, and made an executive decision. Yeah, I can be there. The galaxy can wait. Barbecue education is critical to interstellar stability now. Never thought I'd hear that sentence, but you're not wrong. The next cycle arrived exactly on schedule. Marcus stood in New Memphis's main square, which had been expanded to accommodate what was essentially a cooking school meets military training facility. Kravik's shuttle landed with characteristic Vracs precision, and the general emerged wearing something Marcus had never expected to see. A custom-made apron with the Vracs Empire insignia and the words Warrior Chef, in both English and Vraxian. Marcus Webb, Kravik said formally, then broke into what might have been a smile. Hard to tell with the teeth. I have brought my command staff, 23 warriors all eager to learn. Also, Vex has questions about fermentation. Fermentation? That's advanced stuff. He discovered pickles last visit. He has become obsessed. The day proceeded with the surreal image of Vrax warriors, each one capable of tearing through hull plating, carefully learning about temperature control, smoke types, and the importance of resting meat. They took notes with the same intensity they probably applied to tactical briefings. One of them asked 3 times about the chemical breakdown of connective tissue, taking detailed measurements. Kravik stood at a massive smoker, monitoring temperature like it was a weapons system. The precision required is similar to orbital calculations. The timing must be exact. The temperature must remain constant. I understand now why you take this seriously. It's an art and a science, Marcus agreed. You've got the discipline for it. Most people don't have the patience for 18-hour brisket. Most people are not Vrax warriors. We are accustomed to long campaigns. By the end of the day, 23 Vrax warriors had successfully prepared their first properly cooked meals. The pride on their faces was unmistakable. Vex had indeed cornered Dr. Yuki about fermentation and was now planning to start a pickling operation on his home planet. As Kravik's shuttle prepared for departure, the general paused at the ramp. Marcus Webb. When we first met, I intended to conquer your species. Instead, you have given us something far more valuable. You have improved our lives. You have shown us that strength does not mean rejecting knowledge even from unexpected sources. The Vrax Empire is in your debt. Just keep spreading the word about proper cooking, General. That's payment enough. We will do more than that. The Vrax now include culinary education in our military academy. Every warrior will learn proper food preparation. Your methods will be taught across 47 star systems. You have started a revolution, Marcus Webb. A delicious revolution. The shuttle lifted off and Marcus watched it go, shaking his head in disbelief. Jenny appeared beside him, holding a tablet showing news feeds from across the galaxy. You're trending on 7 different species communication networks. The Vrax have started publishing cooking tutorials. 3 civilizations have requested similar cultural exchanges, and someone started a restaurant on the neutrality station called the Grill Sergeant. They stole my apron slogan? They're paying you royalties, apparently, Kravik insisted. Marcus laughed, a genuine sound of exhaustion and relief. So, we saved humanity with barbecue, befriended a warrior empire, and accidentally started a galactic cooking movement. That's definitely not in the diplomatic handbook. There's going to be a new handbook. You're writing a chapter. It's titled, Food as First Contact Protocol. Catchy. A message came through on Marcus's communicator. It was from the Galactic Council, stamped with official seals and signatures from at least 15 species. He opened it, expecting either commendation or censure. It was a formal request for humanity to host an interstellar culinary summit. They wanted to learn. All of them. Marcus looked at Jenny. We're going to need more grills. And more patience. I've already got 12 species asking about Earth cooking techniques. Half of them can't even process the same nutrients we can. Then we'll figure it out. That's what we do. Humans have been adapting recipes and sharing food for 50,000 years. Now we're just doing it with aliens. The sun was setting over New Memphis, casting long shadows across the expanded square. Somewhere in orbit, Vrax warriors were probably practicing their newly learned smoking techniques on their ships. Somewhere else in the galaxy, species that had never considered cooking were watching tutorials and ordering equipment. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day, one that Marcus had tried to explain to the Galactic Council months ago when this whole thing started. Never threaten a species that has perfected the art of low and slow cooking. They will either befriend your warriors with brisket or make you look like an idiot for eating raw meat. Sometimes both. And as Marcus walked back toward the colony center, already planning menus for the upcoming summit, he reflected that there were worse ways to achieve galactic peace than through properly seasoned, expertly prepared and generously shared food, though the paperwork was still absolutely terrible.